Hello, worldwide photo walkers. My name is Terry White, and today we're going to take a look at, if you're out on your walk, how you might use your mobile devices to capture better images. Now, we're all carrying around smartphones. We're all shooting occasionally with them. I know you're out on a photo walk, and you're probably going to take your DSLR or your hot new mirrorless. But if you're not taking a hot new mirrorless or a DSLR, and you just kind of want to walk around and have fun with the photo walk, you can still capture some great images with your smartphone. And what makes it even better is if you capture those images in a higher quality using the Lightroom camera. That's right. So if you download Lightroom for iOS from the Apple App Store or on Android on the Google Play Store, you can access the Lightroom camera inside the app so that you can get more control over your photography. Let me demonstrate. So I've got Lightroom here on my iPhone. It's down in the lower right corner there. I'm going to go ahead and I can tap on it to launch the app, but one of the tricks on iOS is that if you hard press, you get a pop-up menu and you can go right to take a photo. So if I go right to take a photo, that takes me right into the camera. Now I'm in my hotel room. This is not the photo walk, but I'm in my hotel room in San Francisco and I've got a beautiful sunrise here. And just looking at the cityscape, there's some bars in the way. I would probably get a little closer to the window, but for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to walk you through the features. Now in the upper left-hand corner, there's an X to close the camera. There's a flash icon, which I have the flash turned off. In most cases, you're going to have the flash turned off. And you notice in the middle, it says DNG at the top. That's because my device supports shooting in RAW. So if I were to tap the DNG icon, I get to toggle between DNG and JPEG. So one of the first tips right off the bat is if your device supports it, switch it to DNG. That way you'll be using your phone to capture the highest quality image that your phone can capture, uncompressed, unadjusted, DNG files. So I'm going to use it on DNG, and then of course the upper right corner is the toggle between selfie and taking it with the rear camera or cameras. Now, there's a little icon, 3 dots at the bottom right of that selfie icon, and this lets you just get some more control over your composition. So right now it's going to take a 4:3 image, which is the standard format for most cameras. But if you tap on 4:3, you can shoot in other formats. So let's say you are shooting something that's going to go in a video. So maybe you shoot it in 16:9. Or you just want the nostalgia of the previous version of Instagram. You want a 1:1 square. And of course 3:2. I'm going to leave it on 4:3 for now. And you have a timer. So if you mount your phone on a tripod, you have the ability to jump into the shot, or at least time the shot, and let's make sure you get stuff out of the way. And then what I love about this is you get the ability to bring up a grid. So for example, I love the third icon, which is the rule of thirds. I was like blanking on the name there for a minute. So with the rule of thirds, what you're doing is you're putting the most important things in the intersections, in the where the lines cross, and that's just a good rule for doing good composition work. So if I was really just shooting that tower instead of shooting it straight on, I'd move it like that to where the intersection is there, and I would capture a little bit more to the right of things just so it leads your eye into that tower. Now again, I get closer to the window so I wouldn't have the bars in the way, but you get the idea. All right, so next we have this icon over here, which is your highlight clipping, just like on your DSLR. So if your highlights are blown out, you can turn that on and show your highlights. And then there's a menu to get to other things like maxing your screen brightness, aka draining your battery faster, whether it's going to geotag your photos or not, saving an uncompressed original when you do HDR, so you can turn all those things on. Okay, so we can hide the menu for now, and then we're going to go all the way to the bottom where it says auto. Auto is just like on your DSLR or your other cameras. It's just going to capture auto. It's going to capture the scene that it thinks. So if I just tap the shutter now, it captured an auto scene based on whatever it thought the light needed to be and the settings needed to be. Now, before we switch from auto to other settings, let me go through the ones on the right. So you have the W, which means I'm capturing wide angle right now. If I tap, I can switch to the telephoto of this particular iPhone. So now I get a better shot without the bars in the way. I can go ahead and tap and get that shot as well. Or maybe I want to move a little bit more that way. That's kind of cool as well. All right, so we'll get that shot as well. All right, and then you have your your lock for your settings. Let's see, I think this is your exposure lock. So if you're going to be moving your camera around, recomposing, this will lock the exposure so it doesn't readjust the exposure based on where you point the camera. So if you're kind of trying to keep the shots to look the same, you want to do your exposure lock. All right, so next up are filters. So these are live filters. So for example, if you switch to black and white, you're filtering it in black and white as you take the shot. So you get to see exactly what you're going to get. I'm going to turn off the filters for now. And let's switch to the auto button. Let's pop it up. And by default, you're going to have automatic and professional for sure. If your camera supports it, you're going to have HDR or high dynamic range. The last two, long exposure and depth capture, are technology previews. So you can enable those in the Lightroom menu or settings for your device. You can enable those technology previews if you want to play around with them. Long exposure is kind of cool. It simulates a long exposure by capturing multiple frames and then allowing you to get the long exposure effect of like a car moving by and the lights being a streak and things like that. Depth capture creates a depth map that can be used for editing later on. But we're going to stick to the top three since that way these are the ones you're most likely to use in your photo log. So if we switch to professional, professional is going to give you all the manual controls. So it's like going to manual on your regular cameras. So I have exposure compensation. I can slide it to the right to make my shot brighter, slide it to the left, and you see my highlight clipping started to happen there. I'm blowing out the highlights in that spot. Or I can make it darker. So if I want to darken a scene or lighten a scene, I have exposure compensation to do that. I also have shutter speed, so I can adjust the shutter speed manually or leave it on auto. And of course, I'm making it blown out, but we can bring it down as well. And slow the shutter speed or increase the shutter speed. Now you also have ISO, which is on auto. You can adjust the ISO. So if you think it's ISO is too high, and therefore introducing grain, you can set it to a number that you're comfortable with. You can adjust the ISO to your heart's content. So that's ISO 200, and it's using auto 1/1200th of a second, something to that effect. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and put the ISO back to auto and let it do its thing. And then of course you have white balance. So you can leave the white balance on auto, but since you guys are going to be out on a photo walk, you probably either want to use daylight or cloudy, depending on your circumstances. So that will warm up this shot or cool off this shot, depending on which one I pick. The rest are pretty much for indoors, but if you're out and about walking, you can go ahead and do that. And you can even choose a manual white balance with the eyedropper. So you got controls over your white balance even before you take the shot. You don't have to wait till after you take the shot to fix the white balance. And then you have your focus controls. So it's on auto, but I can create like a kind of a depth of field using the slider here to kind of blur out areas of the photo, or just leave it on auto. And of course, reset puts it all back to the way it was when you came in. That way, if you think you screwed something up, you can go ahead and adjust it. Now, one of the things I love about this is even in, I believe in automatic, I have the ability to slide back and forth, left and right, to adjust exposure compensation. So I'm just dragging literally on the image I'm about to take. So even if you are not in professional and you're not in HDR, you can still adjust your exposure compensation just by dragging left and right on the image itself. All right, and of course, that leads us to HDR. So there's no real settings for this other than exposure compensation, white balance, and a focus point. But what this allows me to do is shoot, if I take a shot now, for example, let's take one. It captured that using 3 frames. So it shot 3 frames very quickly. And then if I close the camera, what it's doing, you see an exclamation point on the cloud icon. That means it processed those 3 images into my HDR. Now, all the shots you take with the Lightroom camera are going to be automatically added to the all photos section. So we don't have the ability to shoot in an album like we used to. Hopefully they bring that back. But right now, if you just shoot, they're going to go into the all photos. Then you can move them into albums or copy them into albums as you see fit. So if I go here, there's my HDR shot in the upper left corner. So it shows me that it says HDR. It shows me that it says DNG for the other ones that I shot on automatic or professional. So if I go in, now HDR does hit the auto tone button by default. So that's why it's adjusted the light, the color, the optics, and things like that. It has done some of that work for me. But you can go in and continue to adjust to your heart's content. Or you can go in and reset it. If you say, no, I know better, I can go all the way to the bottom right and hit reset and reset all the adjustments and adjust it myself manually. But I kind of like what it did. I like the golden look of the sun coming up from the east to my right, probably to your left. And I like the way it's illuminating the buildings as the sun comes up. So even if you're out on a photo walk and you're looking at all this big gear that people are carrying, you're saying, all I have is a smartphone. That's okay, because we've just given you a professional camera inside your smartphone. Take advantage of it. Even if you're shooting with your professional camera, take some shots with the Lightroom camera. They'll be right in Lightroom. They'll sync to the cloud. They'll be on your desktop when you get back. And you can capture some scenes while your big camera's doing other things, like long exposures. All right, so with that said, cheers everybody. Thanks for watching and have a great photo walk. We'll see you next time. Bye everybody.